Hello there, friends. This is Spencer Michaud, and today we're going to be talking about the new moon in the first decan of Scorpio. I hope that you're having a wonderful Friday afternoon or whenever you're listening to this out in digital land. We are going to break down all the elements of the new moon. We're going to take a look at its host, Mars. We're going to talk about some of the planets that are traveling with the moon. We're going to look at some of the astrology that's leading up to the moon and the full moon, the new moon, and looking at the astrology that's going to be happening after that new moon. We're going to be taking a look at the Mars-Pluto opposition and the Venus-Jupiter opposition. Lots to cover today. So I hope that you're doing well out there. If you are joining us today, please just drop me a little comment in the chat box here. It's always nice to see my friends stopping in and where you're stopping in from. Just going to welcome a few friends here today. Tracy's here. What's up, Tracy? Says hello, lovelies, from East Greenbush, New York. California grown. Nice to see you, Tracy. Nice to see you here. My friend, hope that you're having a wonderful Friday afternoon over there in New York. Castle Rock is here. What's up, Castle Rock? Nice to see you. Corey? I think that's your name. Hello, on my way to vote. All right, so I'll be in and out. I believe Corey is joining us from Iowa. So I'm happy to see that you are exercising your right as an American to get out there and vote. I encourage everyone to do so. I'll be dropping my ballot off soon here this weekend as well. So yeah, it's interesting times, right? Interesting times, but nice to see you here, Corey. And it's always nice to see your face in the chat. What's up, Corinne? Nice to see you, Candy Corn. Hope you're doing well here this week. Welcome. I'm not sure exactly where you're stopping in from, but let me know where you're stopping in from. I'll give your place of residence a shout out as well. Rachel Alone is here. What's up, Rachel? Says greetings from very autumnal Ireland. Nice to see you, Rachel. Always like sharing the dinner hour with you over there in Ireland and your interesting contributions to the chat and your international perspective. Oh yes, Corinne is stopping in from Connecticut. Nice. Thank you for clearing that up for me. Boring Connecticut. Oh, I don't know how boring it is. It's probably beautiful fall colors over there, my friend. So yes, thank you for that. Okay, so we will go on a little bit of a journey today. A couple of new announcements. Of course, we're going to be talking about the new moon in Scorpio 1 today. Trying to get my energy up. It's kind of that fall time of the year where you do a lot of reflecting. We've had a crazy week here too. I think that Tanya and I have been, stepping in it literally. We had a sewage backup this week in our basement, and dealing with that on top of just the regular things of life throws off your routine, and you get kind of tired, and it's just a lot to process. So we had a really Sun-Pluto squared experience this past week, and now the cleanup phase is happening. And that might be part of the Scorpio, energy as well, just cleaning up the muck that was exposed and trying to put the pieces back together on some level. So I think that's part of what we're going to be dissecting here today. Got a couple other people. Ooh, Andy's stopping in. What's up, Andy H? Stopping in from England. Nice to see you, my friend. Hope you're doing well over there across the pond. Rachel says, literally just finished eating, so me and my furry friend below the chair are ready to learn, chat, and partake of your wisdom from the stars. Oh, I love that, Rachel. Yes, I appreciate that, friend. And yes, it was a very scorpionic encounter. This week has definitely been going into the bowels of our home and cleaning up the muck that was exposed after a blockage hopefully has been cleared up. So yeah, the most scorpionic of experiences, dealing with plumbers and with cleanup and all of those things. It is quite an experience. That's all I'll say about it. And send your love to Tanya as well, who's been working really hard on a lot of that. Okay, a couple announcements before we get to it. So I am having a Scorpio season sale, friends. If you are interested, there is the Decans of Scorpio webinar that you can purchase for 20% off over at spencermichaud.com. You can click on the store button. if you would like to purchase that. I will show you a few of those slides today, but if you want a deep dive into Scorpionic archetypes, that is the best place to find it. Those webinars are anywhere from 2.5 to 3.5 hours long. Just do a huge brain dump into those, and we talk about the myths, the tarot cards, the fixed stars, the planets that host the signs. It is a real barn burner, if you will. So check that out, and it's a great way to support the channel. I also am having a beautiful webinar with my partner, Tanya Andrews, Dignity and Devotion, the 7 traditional planets, and we're going to be diving into Mercury on Saturday, November the 9th. So if you want to come and learn about Mercury and all of its significations, all of its dignities, and how it might be functioning within your chart, in addition to learning about how to create a devotional practice to Mercury through ritual, but also through creating talismanic material or materia. Tanya is a great astrological magician, and she is going to be teaching you all about how to craft that relationship with Mercury. We're both going to be talking about the significations of Mercury, its synodic cycles. It's going to be a great time, so check that out, November the 9th. There's a link in the chat if you're watching on YouTube if you want to sign up. Third Coast Mojo is also having some featured products this week, and here we see Mars Crown of Horns. If you're having some challenges with Mars and Cancer, which Mars is in its fall in that particular sign, Tanya has some really great material to help you mitigate those factors. We have a Mars in Capricorn oil called Crown of Horns. It's really great stuff. It can help you to get back on track and see the big picture and try to be a little bit more grounded in these lunar martial times. So check that out. There's also going to be a Mercury box set that's coming out pretty soon as well, where you get 50% off of that box set when you sign up for the Dignity and Devotion Mercury webinar. So take advantage of that. I will also say, if you want to support the channel, you can buy a super chat today with a little $ in the chat, or you can go to buymeacoffee.com, which is basically a Patreon alternative, and support the channel that way. Thank you so much, everyone who has been able to donate either through Super Chat or Buy Me a Coffee or in alternative ways. I really do appreciate that. And thank you so much for helping me do this work that I do and facilitating the channel and the show. All right, friends, let's get back to this new moon. What do you say? Let's do it. I've got some people stopping in the chat that I want to welcome before I do that. We've got Robin stopping in, says, hi, Spencer and friends. Robin here from Healdsburg, California. So happy to be here. I'm happy that you're here, Robin. Hope that you're doing well, and let's all wish Robin an early happy birthday. I think Robin is Scorpio and is going to be celebrating her birthday soon. So happy birthday to you, Robin, and I hope it's going to be a good one for you. Rachel says, this is a 5th house moon for me. Always intrigued that we Cancer risings have Scorpio in the 5th. Yeah, it is fascinating to see where we might be experiencing those Scorpionic archetypes. As a Leo ascendant, I experienced this in the 4th house. So, digging out all the crap from the basement has been a lifelong endeavor on some level. So showing where we need to experience death and rebirth, and maybe experience certain hungers that have difficulty getting fulfilled, might be a Scorpionic archetype as well. So we'll break that all down for you, especially talking about the first decan of Scorpio. Corey says, I'd totally be taking a class right now if my source of income didn't dry up. I work in a greenhouse. Oh no, Corey. Well, hopefully there'll be opportunities for you to join our community in the class capacity. I'm just happy that you're here today and supporting the channel. We should have some more Lord of the Rings classes coming up in the months ahead. So if something changes in your situation, that'd be a cool thing to get involved with. But again, just your presence here is much appreciated, friend. Rachel says, I will try to join you guys for the Mercury one. My calendar has felt very full since September, but the 9th could be a good day. I hope that you do, Rachel. I think it'll be an excellent webinar. The moon was very thorough. We actually ended up going about 4 hours. So there was a lot of information packed into that webinar. I hopefully Tanya and I brought you a good value. You can purchase that webinar if you missed it in the store as well. So there's an opportunity to be able to engage with that material. The moon's a really important one for astrological magic because it really shows us a lot of the features of the chart when we're electing a planetary election. The moon is really important, secondary part of that as well. So there was a lot of ground to cover with that. But I think it's going to be great, and I would love for all of you to join us. Thomas here says, Namaste, everyone. Yes, sunny and cool 66-degree day in San Francisco. Nice. I'm glad to hear that, Tom. It's always nice when we can have some beautiful weather outside. It's kind of rainy and gloomy here in Michigan today. Lots of leaves are falling. I cleared out the parking lot of leaves the other day, but the leaves weren't done yet, so I'm going to have to do that again. But so it goes. These are the cycles that we do. Oh, here's a new face. Tamer Takuya, nice to see you. Says, yay, it's Scorpio new moon exactly on top of my natal moon. Any tips, Spencer? Well, welcome, friend. And thank you so much for joining us. This is a new face in the crowd here, and hopefully you'll find a supportive community. Yeah, I think that we're going to talk a lot about this Scorpio new moon today and how to work through it. We're going to be looking at an I-Ching reading and an animal spirit that's going to help us. I think the just main thing, big picture thoughts, Tamer Takuya, is coming to terms with the cycles of loss. And I think being able to release forms that no longer serve us. I think when we hang on too tightly to forms that no longer have vitality, we end up getting sad, depressed, end up getting stuck. The energy that wants to find a new form ends up getting blocked, and that can lead to all sorts of hardships and challenges. So I think that the main advice I can give you for this new moon is identify where we need to return a form back to the earth so that we can cultivate the land for future fertility, but also mourn and celebrate our losses on some level. We mourn and grieve the things that we are forced to let go of, but also it's an opportunity for us to celebrate not only the life that those things and people played in our lives, the roles that they played in our lives, but also to appreciate the people and situations that are still living and are giving us vitality or that we are exchanging energy with. There's nothing like the loss of something important to us to help shift us towards gratitude. So I think that's my first thought as far as the tips with this. And if it's on top of your natal moon, friend, this is a type of experience that you've probably been going through for your entire life, like just coming to terms with loss, maybe having some difficulty getting some of your more instinctual needs met, but understanding that sometimes we have to go through these ritual fasting periods, right? Where we try to understand the cycles of desire and hunger and identifying which of those desires and hungers are healthy and which ones are actually bringing us down. So those are some things that I can suggest for you, but welcome, friend. Mariel Nunez is here, says, hello, Spencer from Argentina. Oh, we've got another Argentina resident here today. That's nice. We've got another kind of an expat from Argentina in Germany that usually stops in, but Marila, I think I'm pronouncing that right, Marila. Welcome, friend, and I hope that you're doing well over there in the Southern Hemisphere. I love the international crowd we have here. Corey says, is it blasphemous to admit to the chat that I've never seen The Lord of the Rings? I tend to resist pop culture things with a cult-like following, including Star Wars, Harry Potter, Taylor Swift, etc. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Corey, you got some catching up to do. No, I mean, here's the thing. Everybody is entitled to like or dislike whatever they feel like. And there's no pressure in joining the Tolkien cult, so to speak. I just happen to enjoy it. I enjoy the books. Some of the movies were good. I mean, I know there's arguments back and forth about transitions from books to film, but I do think some of these cultural touchstones can give us new languages to speak through. I think one of the things I'm really enjoying about studying The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings is it's giving us new mythology to be able to talk about our lives in terms of. Same thing with Star Wars. Same things with Harry Potter. All of these types of stories can be myths that we can draw strength, energy, wisdom from. We can see these characters going through some of the challenges that we go through as human beings. And when we see a heroic character overcoming very difficult odds, that can be very inspiring. But, here's the thing. There's so many stories like that, and there's so many ways to engage with that type of inspiration that to each his own, you know. Yes, and welcome, friends, for sure. It says, yes, wonderful advice. Thank you, Spencer. It says Tamer Takuya. Thank you, friend. Appreciate you. Laura is here. What's up, Laura? Says, hi, friends. 12th house new moon for me. Let's get deep in there. Well, Laura, we're gonna, Scorpio is the time to get up all in that business, right? If you missed the first few minutes, we had a sewage backup in our house, and that was super fun all week. Very Scorpionic for sure. But we'll try to unpack that for you. Corey says, I live under a rock by choice. I'll tell you what, Corey. I think that the ability to filter out noise is important. I think that sometimes in a modern society, we can just be inundated and overwhelmed with information, with opinions, with media, all of those things. I think that taking time to connect with the earth, like you obviously do, working in a greenhouse and working in your own gardens, there's a real beauty to that. There's a real grace to that. It's something that I've been trying to incorporate into my own life more and more and more. I think sometimes just sitting in front of the computer, as much as I love connecting with all of you here, and I really do. Sometimes I want to be outside. Sometimes I want to be like sitting under a tree and reading a book or walking out in the woods. And balance is the key, though. In our modern societies, I think that one of the things I've been meditating a lot upon recently is how extreme things have seemed to have gotten. People's opinions are becoming more extreme. People's actions about what they like and dislike become extreme. And I tend to want to fall back onto balance. And I think that when we see the world in black and white rather than in ambiguous shades of gray, that's when we start to really create division and whatnot. So I think that there are healthy ways to engage with things like the internet, like technology, like media, like cultural touchstones. And there's healthy ways to engage with nature, and it doesn't have to be all or nothing. So I think that that's a bringing a little bit of that into it to be able to connect with people could be fun on some level. Some of these stories that we're talking about, Corey, they're just fun. Like the Lord of the Rings is fun. Star Wars can be fun. And yes, again, we can argue about or agree to disagree about where corporate entities have taken the original intention of these authors and creators, but the original stories themselves had a lot of meaning and value. Rachel says, Castle Rock, I'm in your boat. I'm more likely to read Lord of the Rings, but still working up to that. And I'm also thought of as living under a rock, but sometimes niche interests are there. Yeah, absolutely. And again, this is the thing. We all have our things that we like, and no pressure. I'm just sharing something that I'm finding a lot of joy in, and if it is something that sparks your interest, awesome. And if it isn't your thing, that's okay too. We can still connect with the language of astrology. Rachel says, we have to choose where we devote our attention thoughtfully. Absolutely. Rachel says, I also live across the bay from another Castle Rock here in Ireland. Oh, connecting things. Absolutely. Lauren is here. Painted Turtle says, everyone needs a little Gandalf in their lives. I started with the Lord of the Rings movies. I have to say, reading The Hobbit, the movie did surprisingly capture the spirit and humor. Yeah, I thought Peter Jackson did a pretty nice job. And I think that one of the things I love about The Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings is the relationship between the hobbits, between the fellowship, the camaraderie. the ability to support each other through difficult times. There's some real beauty to be found within that, and especially with challenges that we've been going through as a society that we can see mirrored in that cultural mythology. One of the things that Tolkien was consciously trying to do was create a mythology for Northern Europe, for England, create his own version of some of those Greek, Norse, Icelandic myths, Teutonic myths. And he was drawing upon all of those sources and kind of molding it in his own fashion. It's really incredible to see. He created an entire history. Uh, it's really in depth, and we're just starting to scratch the surface as a group. So I think it's going to be a lot of fun, and I'm really excited about just learning what I can from it. Uh, yes, Painted Turtle's talking about the challenges of the translations from the book and the movies for sure. Rachel says it's also more important what lies behind someone's enthusiasm for a particular subject or artist. That's the real thing we should always be curious about, even if it's not necessarily our thing. Yes, essence, I think, is the word that you're referring to there. The essence behind something. I truly believe that spiritual concepts have a certain essence. If you think about it in the related to Platonic forms, but there are so many different physical manifestations of that essential truth that we can see. This is what's so fun about studying comparative mythology and symbolism, and seeing how it plays out in our cultural touchstones like Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, etc. It's really fascinating to see how those stories are connecting to older myths, because the human experience, when you really boil it down to its essentials, hasn't changed all that much in many thousands of years. Yes, the trappings are different. The external challenges may be a little bit different. The forms are different, but we all long for companionship. We all are trying to get needs and desires met. We all deal with loss and grief. We all deal with overcoming challenges that we can consider negative or evil sometimes. And we're all just trying to figure out what it means to be on this planet. And these are the same things that people were trying to figure out through their mythology, through their cultural stories. And I just think it's a fascinating opportunity to reflect on why we're here and what we're doing. Corey says, I feel like I missed the boat on lore for all these things. It's always fun to uncover archetype in unexpected places. Yeah, absolutely. Here's the thing. There's no better place to start than today. I think that it's easy when we're starting to study things from the past that are very detailed to feel like we're behind and that we've missed the boat. I felt like that many times. I felt like that when I was studying music and I saw people that were ahead on the path that had more years of experience. I felt that same feeling when I started studying traditional astrology and saw people that were 10, 20, 30 years ahead on the path as well. I think there's a concept that Ira Glass talks about there, Corey, called the gap. And it's the gap between our taste, our desires, and our skill set. And he really says that the only way to close that gap is to do a lot of work, to just get to it, And I found that to be true. And it really doesn't matter when we start that work. It just matters that we do the work. And we don't have to do it in an unhealthy way. I've tried to figure out the right balance in my life. When I feel that feeling, Corey, I start to obsess about the thing that I want to catch up on. And it's hard for me to almost think about anything else. I have I dive into it with a real fever, right? A fervor, I guess you could say. And it works for a little while, but then life comes back around and you have to find the right balance of just taking care of the daily things in your life, your relationships, your self-care, all of those things. And then you start to realize that there's nowhere that you need to be but right here, right now. And it's a hard lesson to learn, especially with people that have, such as myself, that sometimes can suffer from a little bit of anxiety. And I think that learning to be present in the moment is something that spiritual teachers have taught for eons and eons and eons. And that the same goes true with our knowledge base. There's no better place to start than today, and to just enjoy in the process, right? Take joy in that process wherever you're at. You're no better or worse than anyone else. You are where you're meant to be. Steven is here. Says, what's up? Steven says, good morning from San Francisco. I'm feeling good about this season. Yeah, Steven, I hear you. Steven says, the new moon is close to my natal Jupiter at 5 degrees. Ooh, so that might be why you like this season, because it's activating the greater benefic in your chart. Yeah, Steven, I think that there are beautiful things to be able to appreciate about every season. And we're all going to experience each of the different signs and seasons a little bit differently based on our own chart, based on our own worldviews. As I've been talking about recently, analyzing the condition of your first house ruler can be very instructive as far as how we might be feeling during a certain season. For example, I'm a Leo ascendant, so the sun is my first house ruler. So I recently went through Libra season where the sun was in its fall. The sun was in a challenging place. And I felt my energy shift for the better when the sun moved into Scorpio. It moved into an angular house. It moved out of its fall, improving its dignity. Doesn't mean I'm not dealing with the scorpionic archetypes. It just means that maybe I'm feeling a little bit better physically. Like when the sun moved into Scorpio, with all the things we've been dealing with the basement stuff, I needed to take back a little bit of feelings of being in control. Whoa, I don't know what spirit took that. So there must have been some movement over here, some spirit. I have something called center stage on my camera, which it follows movement. And there was no particular movement back there, but maybe there's a spirit here with us today. That would make some sense. But I digress. I was saying that I started cleaning the house and really just putting things back in order to feel like I was being able to shift the energy and take back a little bit of the, I guess the feelings of control, although those things can be fleeting. But, like I said, every season has its own advantages and disadvantages, and we all have different experiences of it. Corey says, you and I are much alike. Cheers to Jupiter and Virgo. I'll look into the concept of the gap, as this theme has come up for all 32 years of my existence, right? Yeah, I mean, it's amazing the insights we get into ourselves as as our story unfolds. And again, I really truly believe that we are where we're meant to be with the amount of knowledge that we're meant to have in the moment. And I haven't always believed that. That's taken me a long time to come to terms with. Doesn't mean I get complacent, just means that learning to accept our circumstances is important. That also means learning when we need to make changes too. So all of those things can be true. All right, friends, thank you so much for all these comments here. Let's talk a little bit about this new moon. Let's bring the chart up. I'm going to share my screen, and we are going to take a look at it. Okay. So here we see the new moon in Scorpio, 9 degrees of Scorpio. It's going to be how we are going to start our month of November. Okay, this is 9 degrees, the final degrees of the first decan of Scorpio. This is pretty interesting. We are kind of seeing, hold on a second. Why isn't that working? I'm going to stop this for a second. And let's share this in a slightly different way. Let's see. No, not that one. Thank you for your patience, friends. So there is, let's see if that'll allow me to, there we go. Now I can draw on the screen. So there is the new moon in Scorpio, 9 degrees. It's co-present with Mercury, although it's not super tightly conjoined to it. We have this lunation hosted by Mars in Cancer, which is providing its resources via a trine. I would also say that we have this beautiful concept here of mutual reception between the moon and Mars, where they are exchanging resources, but from a place of difficulty. They are both in their fall. So we have the moon in Scorpio in its fall, Mars in Cancer in its fall. And this is a challenging place for both of these planets. There was someone who was commenting, I don't know if this was last week or in one of my classes, but they said that there was an astrologer that was talking about two drunkards stumbling home but supporting each other on the way up. And I thought that was a pretty apropos metaphor. We have these two planets in difficult positions, ones where they're not super comfortable, all right? And if you think about why this might be, the moon is a place or is a planet that is related to life, is related to manifestation, bringing things into existence. It also can be related to death, okay? Don't get me wrong. But the house of the moon, Cancer, is related to birth. And when we have Mars in that particular house, that planet is related to death. That planet is related to severing, separating, to conflict. And usually the Cancer energy is one of safety, security, nurturing, gentleness. So the Mars is not getting the right type of resources usually when it's in Cancer, okay? Because it is desiring the resources to be able to fight, to be able to exert its will, to be able to defend instinctual life force and desires, or to pursue them. Now, because the moon is in Scorpio's home, or Mars's home of Scorpio, it is being able to draw upon resources that are a little bit more in alignment of what its natural desires might be. Same is true for the moon in Scorpio. The moon in Scorpio generally Scorpio is usually a place of death. It is usually a place of a separation between the body and the spirit, to be able to return a used up body to the earth and to liberate the energy that animated it, to be able to find a new host or a new body, like as we see in the transition to Sagittarius. But now that we have the moon there, we're dealing with a planet that generally wants to create abundance, to nurture and support, and it's in a place related to death. But now we have Mars hanging out in its home sign of Cancer. So you could see that there is this interaction between those two planets that says, hey, we're not in places we normally like to be, but we are exchanging resources. Think about this, like these two planets visiting as deities. Let's say that they are gods, and they are visiting each other's homes. And Cancer's home is very, comfortable. There's a lot of food. There's a lot of plants. There's a lot of animals or something of that nature. It's very, nurturing. Scorpio's home is much different. Scorpio's home is probably darker. Maybe the decoration is more gothic. Maybe it's a place of death. It's a place that is, I'm thinking of like whips and chains or something like that. But it's not as, I don't know, kitschy as Cancer's house might be. But they are in each other's homes, and they have a line of communication with each other, which is important. And they're saying, hey, how do I get what I need here? How do I find the refrigerator? Which room should I sleep in? And there is this uncomfortableness about them being in those places. It's not where they would prefer to be, but they have an interest in supporting the other because of the exchange of homes. Think about having someone who you don't particularly like in your house, but you are also in their house. And you sort of have this agreement with them, or this unspoken agreement that, man, I better cooperate with them, or they're gonna, wreak havoc in my house. I should tell them where everything is, and they should tell me where everything is. And I should treat their stuff fairly well, and they to ensure that they don't mess up my house. It's kind of this like suspicious relationship, but one that is begrudgingly um, beneficial to the other. So that's one part of this new moon in Scorpio. The decan itself, we'll talk about that. We'll break that down in a second, but it really has to do with loss and grief. It's a very Mars decan. It's a Mars ruled face in the Mars ruled sign. We also have a big grand water trine that's going to be coming up here. So you can see this here. We've got a grand water trine between Mercury and between Mercury, Mars, and Neptune. So let me get that up on the screen for you. So here's Neptune, Mars, and Mercury. This grand water trine, right? So an emotional new moon. The beginning of acceptance, I think, on some level as well. We're also going to be seeing this trine from Mars in Cancer to the lunation itself. And what I'd like to do is, first of all, I want to bring up the decans of Scorpio, just so I can break down some of those themes for you, because I think that's important. Let me just check in with the chat real quick here. Stephen had his lunar return. Okay, that's good. Natal Jupiter also ruling retrograde planet in the 12th. Painted Turtle says Cancer's house has antiquities. Okay, there you go. And one of a kind items of memory. Don't run through my house, Mars, Eagle, Scorpio. Yeah. I can attest to that too. I like things that have stood the test of time as a Cancer sun and Mercury myself. So yes, be careful. Right. And think about Mars as like, it's not usually someone who walks carefully through something. Although I will say Scorpio's version of Mars is probably a little bit more intentional than the Aries version of Mars. But also Mars is associated with accidents and with misfortune. So breaking a cherished family heirloom could be a signification of Mars in Cancer or something like that. Dropping the vase or whatever it is. So that's a nice connection there. So if we look at, this is our Scorpio 1 slide from the Decans of Scorpio that is on sale right now if you want to pick that up. And here we see the 5 of Cups. And again, it's a very martial, it's probably the most martial decan in the zodiac, okay? And Book T calls this loss and pleasure, or the Lord of loss and pleasure. And Book of Thoth calls it the Lord of disappointment. Austin Coppock calls it a jawbone, specifically related to hunger. We have a spirit in this decan, or a daimon called the nymphi, and the nymphi related to nymphs, and they were objects of desire. They were sort of like spirits of the forest or of the rivers, etc., nature spirits, but they were something that people desired and pursued in myth. Orion, in particular, pursued the nymphs, and through his boasting and hubris, brought on the wrath of Gaia and Artemis, and had the scorpion sent to kill him. And a lot of this story is related to the fact that when Orion, the hunter that you see there, overlapping with many of the stars of Gemini, are setting in the Western Hemisphere, the Scorpion constellation is rising. So the Scorpion sort of chasing Orion away. So I think that's kind of interesting to see how the stars themselves are contributing to those stories and how they function in our visible universe. So some themes with this decan: hunger and starvation. You see in this card a cloaked figure in black, mourning the loss of 3 spilled cups. Of course, he does have those 2 cups that are still standing behind, and we'll talk about that. But this decan can show us where we have desires that are difficult to get met. One of the hallmarks of addiction is the cycle of being able to pursue a desire, fulfill it, but it not being able to satiate that desire, and then that desire coming back again and again and again, cyclically. And in Scorpio 1, we can identify some of those desires that we have difficulty satiating. Hopefully, to be able to transmute them, to heal them, okay, to heal the grief potentially, to be able to identify whether that desire is even healthy for us, because oftentimes it's not. Trying to identify the things that aren't actually bringing us joy or pleasure or success or peace. These are all important things to look at when we're dealing with a Scorpio new moon or Scorpio season in general. It's also a time when we're seeing the Earth in the northern hemisphere start to recede back into itself, where things start to become dormant, where the leaves start to fall from the trees, where our gardens start to become quiet, where the insects and the birds start to hibernate or to die or to migrate. And we feel that loss. I feel that loss as someone who is an enthusiastic gardener. Being able to go out and see the life in my garden as a source of support. And I feel the loss acutely now that I have connected in a deeper way. But I think that it has its own beauty. There's flushes of beautiful color. There is winter interest, so to speak, with all the seeds that are preparing to take flight and to plant themselves in the remains of the old season's forms. There's always things to appreciate in all the different seasons, but you definitely feel it when you're a gardener. So grieving our losses, ritualizing that grief, I think that's important too. A lot of the times we just tend to keep we're forced to keep moving when we are experiencing loss and grief. This is one of the downsides of living in a utilitarian society where we measure our value about what we can do and give to the world and what actions we take physically or what we produce. Is when we experience loss, we don't really have a way to contextualize that beyond the normal, just like a funeral or something like that. And even that can be difficult. Like this type of lifestyle kind of expects us to just keep going and producing and doing, etc. And when we learn to live seasonally, you learn that every season isn't necessarily meant to be productive. I think that's one of the things that's so challenging to me about living in our modern times, is that I don't think we quite understand that, or at least the powers that be that are trying to exploit our labor don't want us to understand that. And I think that it's very important that we take that knowledge and wisdom, that ancient knowledge and wisdom, back and start incorporating it into our lives, appreciating the periods of loss, appreciating the periods of dormancy, appreciating that every season does not have to be one of growth. We have to learn to let go of things, or we will get cluttered up. We'll get backed up. Our pipes will get backed up, right? In my case, I had probably a overgrowth of roots from the trees. So too much growth actually leads to death, right? Like too much growth leads to dysfunction. So think about that. How do we eliminate the things that are blocking our ability to appreciate loss? Where can we let go of things both in our physical environments and in our emotional and spiritual environments that no longer serve us? So I think that one of the things I will say about that is it is not just a physical process. What I would encourage you to do during Scorpio season is that take stock not only of the physical forms that need to be released and that need to be returned to the earth, but take stock of your emotions that you need to let go of. What feelings are you hanging on to? What relationships are you hanging on to out of obligation? What grievances are you holding on to out of spite? What beliefs are you holding on to that at one point in your life may have served you well, but now are no longer giving you the energy and life force that you need in this moment? It's okay to compost beliefs as well. I know that sometimes it feels like we're We're killing the ego itself. But that's actually a really important process in spiritual practice, is how do we let go of the sense of self and allow ourselves to change when it becomes necessary. I think that's super important. That the achemical transformation that Scorpio represents requires death. The whole death and rebirth archetypes that you hear, or cliches you hear with Scorpio, well, what's the first part of that? It's death. Like, so accepting death, embracing it, celebrating it even, is honestly part of some of the cross-quarter holidays that we experience. Samhain, and for example, where the veil is thinnest between the living world and the world of the dead. Honoring our ancestors, honoring our losses, communicating, returning the things back to the earth that are no longer serving us. And again, it doesn't necessarily just have to be physical. So, questions you can ask yourself during this period where the sun is in Scorpio 1, but also what process could you begin of release with this new moon in Scorpio? What types of things do you desire? Are your pursuits healthy? Are these pursuits something that is actually feeding you life force? Or is it based on the past? Is it based on something that once maybe brought you joy, but is no longer a reflection of who you are in this moment? This is one of the hardest things in the world to do. I had a moment the other day where I was watching an old performance and getting a little bit nostalgic and misty about music. And on some level, that version of myself doesn't exist anymore. And that's okay, right? Like, just because we did something in the past does not mean that we have to be that person into infinity. Now, if I decide to revisit some of those skills, or if I decide that that's what I want to do with my time, then so be it. But the work that we do, we don't always have a understanding of its importance and its effect on other people as well. One of the things I was thinking about, maybe this is a reflection of how I've changed as a Leo ascendant type. This is a real scorpionic reflection about the release of hubris, is oftentimes when I was doing music, if I was in the flow state, I had an awe of myself. I don't know if any of you with Leo placements ever feel this, but you're like, wow, I can't believe that came out of me, or that came out of my mouth, or that my hands did that, or that I wrote this song, or that I was a channel for this energy. And that sense of wonder of like, wow, didn't I do something incredible? And sometimes I miss that feeling. Sometimes I miss that feeling of like, oh, wow, I'm really in awe of myself. But I think that one of the things that I've learned to shift is, how can I have that same sense of wonder about my community, about not only what comes out of me, but how its tendrils tend to snake out in a mycelial fashion and start to turn on other people's sense of wonder, or to see the wonder that is created from sharing, like we do here in these live streams every week. The ability to be able to share in that appreciation of one another is something that I really enjoy about doing this work, that was a little bit harder to come into contact with just being a solo musical performer. So there are beautiful ways of interacting with every phase of your life and different maturation processes. I think that Scorpio, sometimes the square that we get between Scorpio and Leo in particular is there is this humility that comes with death, with release. And humility is not necessarily one of Leo's favorite things. Leo is definitely about longevity and about sustaining life force. So there is this inherent challenge between those two experiences. And we're experiencing this as I record this, with the last quarter moon, with the moon in Leo and the sun in Scorpio. Oh, I'm just checking in with our chat here. Susanna's here. What's up, Susanna? Nice to see you, friend. Hope you're doing well. Susanna's been making some beautiful pumpkin carvings over there in Finland, so thank you for joining us. Rachel says, and there is, of course, that necessary period of quiet so that life might regenerate with fresh energy. Yeah, amen to that. That word regeneration or regenerative is important. I've been there's some things that I buy now that are using regenerative agriculture, which is sort of like organic, but it takes it to another level where it is really concentrating on replenishing the soil with nutrients. And that is such a necessary process. We can get spread so thin if we just keep trying to grow from the same soil over and over and over again. This was another reason why the transition from music to astrology was such an important one. I was teaching songwriting, and I was teaching kind of the same stuff over and over again. And honestly, it just the vitality that I felt when I was first teaching that started to wane, and I needed a fresh thing to challenge myself towards. And sometimes we need fresh challenges. So there is never a bad time to give yourself a fresh challenge. Rachel says, at some point in my 30s, I learned that I have a special love of autumn and winter. They feel like seasons where much work, but work that is quiet. It is being done in nature and in our own psyches. That's a great point, Rachel. And I think that's another thing that when I was preparing for this talk today, I was reflecting on the martial energy that is more yin, right? The yin Scorpio, Mars energy. If you think about Scorpio as a Mars-ruled sign, the Mars Aries version is very yang. It's like fighting these external battles. Scorpio is about like fighting these internal battles with yourself, right? A lot of the themes in Scorpio I talk about in this Decan's webinar have to do with slaying dragons and serpents, and you can think of those dragons as these monsters that come up that are challenges in our psyches that we're working through and overcoming these self-created but also externalized monsters as well. But a lot of that work, like you said, is hidden. It's not necessarily visible work. So being able to do this in secrecy, to carve out some of the time that you need to do that difficult work of the psyche is very important. And sometimes that requires us to slow down, to be more reflective, to commit to less things on some level. So yeah, I agree with that. Lauren says, a saving grace about all the leaves falling from the woods behind my home is that there's a family of birch that brighten up the space. White trunks catch the sunset colors and reflect back in pinks. Ooh, I love that. I mean, isn't that, that's a beautiful thing, right? To be able to see to the core of something, to be able to see to the trunk of that tree reveals its beauty in a different way that we wouldn't be able to see if it didn't have its adornments. Scorpio is a season that strips us of our adornments, and we really get to the heart of things. This is why a lot of times people who have a lot of Scorpio placements, they're not really fond of small talk. They're like, let's just get to the real stuff. Let's talk about what's really going on in your life instead of all these accoutrements. And there's some really beautiful things that can come from that, like the pink trunks of the birch tree that are revealed. Rachel says, I love the reflection on beliefs and letting go of those that no longer reflect the truth of our present lives. Yeah, super important too. Like I'm not going to dwell on this too much today, but we're heading into an election, and a lot of times we are voting on our beliefs. And I've seen a lot of people who are shifting their beliefs, who once held a certain belief and through their experiences could no longer continue to support that belief or the candidate that represented that belief, and that are making changes around that. And honestly, I have a lot of respect for people that are able to shift their perspectives when they get new information. So this is another thing to think about with Scorpio seasons. How do we shift the beliefs when we have new experiences? Steven says, next Thursday, October 31st, Samhain. I enjoy Halloween close to first Yule and Christmas. Yeah, absolutely. Samhain is a beautiful experience of honoring the dead, honoring our ancestors, dressing as spirits to be able to blend in so that we don't arouse their ire on some level. Rachel says, yes, allowing the death of something requires a lot of courage to sit with the space and emptiness. We do not like that in our society. No, it's tough. And again, I really think that the challenges are, I think that as human beings, we would very much like to come to terms with both cycles of growth and of decay, of acquiring and of letting go. But I do think that there are, this is just one of the hills that I guess I will try to defend or die on, is a lot of it is not necessarily the common person's fault. A lot of it is that we are in systems that are exploitative, where we have people that are very greedy, that want us to continue to consume and consume and consume. This hunger that we have is baked into our societies by people that seek to exploit our hungers and create them. I'll pause for emphasis there. Our hungers and desires are created through things like exploitative advertisement, through the types of media and advertisements that tell us that we are not enough unless we buy this product. Think about that for a second. If we were just left to our own devices, think about how you felt. Many of you, some people have some really difficult origin stories, but many of us, when we were 3, 4, 5 years old, we were pretty happy just sitting there playing with our toys, discovering things about the world with wonder. We hadn't let the world in yet to the point where we took on the world's opinion of us. We were just allowed to be. And I think that this is something to reflect upon during this season, is that which of those influences are healthy? Which ones do you have to filter out to say, I'm good enough just as I am. I don't need this product. I don't need this whatever. I don't need more to be more. Okay? So, yeah, I think it's, again, we like to... I try to take a stance of not victim blaming on this channel, because I think that it's really, there is a lot of new age type of voices out there that speak towards, well, it's just, if you'd only just have more meditative or disciplinary practices, if you just made better choices and things like that, you can turn your life around and everything is going to be fine. They put the responsibility solely on the individual. And I do think individual responsibility is important. Don't get me wrong. We can change our life with our choices. But I also think it's extremely important to acknowledge some of the forces that are bigger than us, that are where it makes it feel like we're swimming upstream. I've been having a lot of reflections on this recently, and how difficult it is to live in this modern society that is, I feel, constantly trying to poison us, our minds and our bodies. Just trying to make choices about our foods and all the chemicals that are in our foods, and the chemicals that are in our water, the medicines that we have, some of which are very necessary. Please don't misinterpret me being critical of some medicines as far as being critical of the entire medical industry. I actually have some pretty strong opinions on that too, if you want to hear those. I think that it's a balance. I'm not an extremist. I think that sometimes, there are life-saving medications that people need. There are also some other medications that are only treating symptoms when we need to treat the causes, the root causes. It is not black or white, okay? But I was feeling some frustration with this week, because a person in my family had a medication that was recalled because it had too much of a certain element that was known to cause cancer. And it just was it just feels like we're swimming upstream, just with the the lead in the water and things of those natures and the chemicals in our food, it can be very hard to try to come into alignment with health. And I guess my point with all of this is that try to be gentle with yourself around some of this, because it really is, we are swimming upstream in a lot of ways. And some of those forces are bigger than you and bigger than me. This is why we have to tackle them, not just as individuals, but as communities. So I think another thing to think about during Scorpio season is how can you find the community that you need to find to be able to overcome some of the challenges that are baked into the systems that we were born into that aren't about personal choice. Tracy says, this Leo sun gets it. Seeing my art on others' walls is wonderful. Yeah, right? I mean, reflecting on that difference between Leo and Scorpio, I think that there is this basking in our own radiance type of experience. And I think some of that is definitely okay, right? It's a feeling, it's a different feeling doing the work that I'm doing now. And it's not a bad feeling. It's just different. And it's the point being is that we're allowed to change as we go through life. Stephen says, I love art too. Mars and Aries in the 5th. Nice. So you're putting it out there with your art. I always love this profile picture that you have, Stephen. Just the mullet. I'm a huge fan. So it's I love that profile picture, friend. Painted Turtle says, I look orange and pink giants that rule winter. I look at them every evening. I am home and in gratitude. For some reason, we have a real lack of evergreens, so it's even more special. Oh, I love that. Love that, Lauren. I'm just checking through the chat here. Tamer Takuya says, I somehow can connect well with this energy, and I personally find it very refreshing every autumn. My natal moon is on Scorpio I, and Pluto is in Scorpio II. So yeah, so friend, so you have this energy baked into your chart. This is familiar. Oftentimes where we have the moon in our chart, it's a place of familiarity, right? It's something where we've looked to support us in our youth or to fall back on. A lot of people that have the moon in Scorpio, death and loss and grief were a part of their origin story, and that's what feels familiar. So they are able to navigate what appears to be a crisis to many of us, and often is, but this is one of the gifts of Scorpio placements, is being able to understand that loss is necessary and to be solid, right? To be fixed within that crisis energy, to be someone that people can count on in the crisis. Lauren says, speaking of Scorpio and dragons, I believe in Vedic, the nodal axis, and Taurus and Scorpio is how you might say in domicile, with head in Taurus, nodal axis being the dragon. I'm trying to unpack that. Are you saying that the nodes are in domicile in Taurus and Scorpio? I guess I'm just trying to understand that statement. Maybe if you could clarify that for me. Don says, I feel that, Rachel. Let's see, what are we referring to? I am behind on the chat here. That not being okay with death. Everyone tries to hide it from children because they don't want to have that difficult talk. Yes, Don. Don says, my Grammy always told us, you start dying the day you were born. Best get okay with it and live while you are here. Absolutely. Don, that's super important. We try to life wash everything. I think that was good. It's a play on whitewash, right? We try to life wash things. We want to shield children from the inevitable truths of death. And I think that's a grave disservice that we do to our children. You'd be surprised at what children can understand if we're just honest with them. I think that, yes, we want to preserve that sense of wonder, but as you are showing us, understanding that we are here for a short period of time and that life is temporal allows us to appreciate those times, allows us to appreciate the life that we have and that we were given. Ancient societies didn't do this as much. They didn't coddle children as much. If you're familiar with the fairy tales of Hans Christian Andersen, they did not coddle those children in those stories, and maybe we were better off for that. I think that being able to understand this from a young age, many of the people who came to terms with loss early in life, myself being one of those people, I came to terms with the loss of family structures. And again, I have Scorpio in the fourth house. I went through deaths and rebirths of parents and families, going through multiple divorces as a child. My parents divorced when I was 2 years old. Then there was a marriage and a divorce, like all throughout my childhood. I had 5 different step parents growing up. There were parents that I had that were really important people in my life that basically died, that were completely gone from my life, and it was painful. But I think that experience shaped my character and helped me to understand that things aren't permanent. And I think that that's hard to understand if we're constantly trying to shelter and shield our children from that inevitable truth that they will have to come to terms with eventually. Dawn says, I love this group so much. Oh, we love that you're here, Dawn. That's awesome. Seema Akiol is here. Says there are reasons why the 7 sins in the Bible were called deadly. Says you are radiating peace and harmony with those wise words. Oh, I appreciate that, Seema. I appreciate that, friend. Yeah, and then we can, I think that if we reflect on the biblical version of sin, some of it is rooted in desire, right? And rooted in things that are excessive. I think that it's trying to teach us about the excesses of greed, of pride, of vanity, etc. I think that the vehicle of guilt is something that I try to avoid more. And that's a lot of times why many people can bristle at some of the methods of that particular spiritual tradition. But I do think that there are some core truths in that I think can be very helpful. And I appreciate your kind words today, Seema. And this is kind of a new name in here too. So welcome to our community, and thank you for being here today and letting your voice be known. Lawrence says, Saturn in Pisces. I've also observed the effects of potencies of medications, whether plant or pharma. Lots of overdoses happen during this transit. Yeah, I think that just coming to terms with altered states of consciousness can be a Saturn in Pisces kind of thing. And some of these medications can induce those altered states of consciousness is potentially, I would say, in general, another planet associated with that is Neptune. And Neptune moving through Pisces can also have that effect as well. So sometimes parsing out what is Neptune and what is Saturn can be challenging. Neptune was discovered at the same time as anesthesia. And I will say, too, that the discovery chart of Neptune has a very close contact with Saturn. I think it was a conjunction with Saturn. Don't quote me on that, but I know that there was an important contact with Saturn. So there are certain astrologers that like to look to the meaning of those outer planets based on their discovery charts, and having Saturn prominently placed within that can give us some insights potentially. But yeah, definitely the one Saturn and Pisces story that I think comes to mind is Kurt Cobain and his challenges, right, with substance abuse and his eventual suicide. So real challenging things that can come up emotionally in particular. Let's see. Oh, thanks for being here today, Dawn. Appreciate you. Corey says, I think Pluto in Capricorn keeps exposing all the ways we face difficulties that are baked into the system. Saturn and Pisces swimming upstream too. Hopefully Pluto in Aquarius gives us clarity. I agree. I think that we're having, let's, back to our chart. Let's bring the chart back up, because I think that you're bringing up a really good point. One that I think is worth breaking down. So Corey is talking about the Pluto and Capricorn energy, and one of the prominent features of this lunation is the Mars-Pluto opposition. So we have Mars in Cancer, okay, really like showing us some of the challenges of desiring excess. Okay. That third 10-degree section of Cancer is about luxuries, but also the dichotomy of scarcity versus surplus, right? So it is the challenging reality that when one benefits, someone else is experiencing lack. And when we have this Mars in opposition to Capricorn 3, which is associated with how we administrate our material systems, how we wield power, especially financial power and governmental power, it's exposing a lot of the flaws within our systems. Now, here's the thing. Every system is going to eventually have flaws within it. Okay? Like, I think that's really important. And you have a great comment here, but it's sort of blocking this thing. So I'm gonna talk about this opposition here, Corey. Every system eventually needs to change, because the systems are created hopefully to meet the needs of the people who are currently creating it. The challenges that we get to when we have Pluto moving through Capricorn like this, especially in America, which has Pluto natally in Capricorn, is when we stick too feverishly to the system that was created 200 years ago, that was serving people's needs 200 years ago, and only some people's needs. Let's be very clear about that. The system was not fair then. It's still not fair now, but here's the thing. We need to make changes to meet the needs that we currently are facing. And Pluto gives us the unique opportunity to do that. It says, hey, have you considered that some of these things are outdated? Have you considered that this may need to change? It's the same concept as we're talking about with Scorpio. And some people call Pluto a modern ruler of Scorpio. I don't do that personally, but I can understand some of the conflations with it, the need for change, the need for alchemical transformation. Every system, whether it's a governmental system or your sewer system, okay, I'm speaking from experience this week, can get backed up. And some of it is through invisible things that are not readily apparent. Does that make sense? I think this is I think super important. For example, let's use the metaphor of the pipes. There are trees that are growing that are just trying to live their life, okay, that are sending their roots searching for water, searching for what they desire. And us living in this house have an equal need to flush the waste out of our home and into the sewer system to be treated and purified, etc. Okay? So those two things are somewhat, they can be at cross purposes, especially if the tree is allowed to send its roots into the pipe, okay, unchecked, and allows the roots to block the pipe, and then one person's needs don't get met. Does that mean that the tree is wrong? It doesn't. Does that mean that we as people are wrong to try to flush our waste out of the house? It doesn't. It just sometimes it means that people's needs sometimes come into conflict with one another, and there needs to be some kind of solution that meets the current needs. Now, for example, how can you get the roots out of your pipe system without killing the tree? Do you see what I'm saying? You don't need to uproot the entire tree to open your pipes up. You can go in and clear out those roots, and then you may have to have some maintenance with it, but you can live in harmony with one another. So this is a metaphor for how we live together with each other peacefully and in harmony. Yes, we do have some needs that come into conflict with one another, but there is a way where we don't have to completely uproot or eliminate whatever we feel is threatening our existence. Do you see what I'm saying? And I think that this is an important lesson of Mars in Pluto, because I think that a lot of times what happens with Mars and Pluto is Pluto just supercharges Mars's desire to, like, say, I'm getting rid of this, right? And it has this kind of polarization energy, and this is leading up to our United States election where we are so polarized, where we feel like many people feel like they have to completely eliminate the other party that they disagree with to get their own needs met. And I think that that is a fool's errand, because people have different needs, people have different desires, and many of those are valid, right? Now, we can sometimes agree on things that are exploitive to everyone, and you're not going to get a lot of disagreement with me on some of those issues. But overall, how do we root out the roots that are blocking the flow while also allowing for our trees to live, if that makes sense? I don't know if I'm making sense with this, but my point being is that every system needs to change every once in a while. And, if we want to take this further, maybe something like the Electoral College in the United States is outdated, right? Maybe it worked at one point in the distant past, but maybe now it's not meeting the needs of a modern society. Maybe there's a lot of other things in American government that isn't meeting the needs of modern society. There's probably tons of those things. All right, so let me check back in here. So this was in relationship to Corey's comment about Pluto and Capricorn. Susanna says, my mom read Hans Christian Andersen stories to me. Many of them were sad and beautiful. For example, Little Mermaid is very different than the Disney version. Yes. I did a children's literature course in college, and we focused on Hans Christian Andersen quite a bit. And yes, it is not the happy ending that Disney tries to portray to you, which has life washed or innocence washed that story. It's tragic. And I think it prepares children for tragedy. I think we're doing children a disservice when we don't prepare them for death and we don't prepare them for loss, right? And, Susanna makes beautiful art out of some of the fallen leaves and the forms that are dying. Like, I think there's ways to appreciate that beauty. So appreciate that. And Susanna's got this beautiful Capricorn rising. So I'm probably having experiences of a relationship with death and with those losses has shaped you, Susanna, and those stories have shaped you and your wisdom. Rachel says, I heard this morning that each time we do anything could be the last time we have that experience. We have no way of knowing. It was a reminder on the Waking Up meditation app. Oh, cool. Yeah, exactly. You really never know. It says, it really touched me and reminded me that all of our ordinary, seemingly relatable experiences are finite and are special in their own way. And this is something that is hard to completely understand in our youth, but becomes more and more apparent as we age, because we start losing things. We start losing our parents. We start losing friends. We start losing our youth. We start losing our parts of our body we were attached to, like our hair, like our muscles, or whatever it is. There's loss that happens. And I think that loss helping us to come into alignment with gratitude is a really important theme with Scorpio 1 in particular. So I'm glad to hear that, and hopefully our reflections on this today will be helpful. Lauren says, I appreciate the insight with Neptune and Pisces, Saturn and Pisces. I think there are a lot to think about there. Yeah, the modern planets are super interesting to me from a traditional perspective, even just thinking about how they fit in with that pantheon of planets. One thing I will offer, Lauren, is that I would suggest checking out Robert Schmidt's lectures and writings about the transpersonal planets, I believe he calls them, transcendental planets. And he talks about comparing them to traditional planets, if we even can. Like, there's debate around that. He goes so far as to compare Neptune to a transcendental moon, which he compares to the Hermetic one thing, this universal substance. He compares Uranus to the one mind, which is universal consciousness. And then he compares Pluto not to Mars, but to Mercury, which is Mercury being a planet of achemical transformation, of finding the right mixtures, of stirring things up. I think Pluto does a similar thing with stirring things up. But if you think about Neptune as a planet that is a solvent, that likes to dissolve things back to substance, there's some really interesting insights that you can get with that. I have found Neptune contexts like to dissolve consciousness, dissolve egos, dissolve physical forms. And I think that whenever we have like, for example, Mercury trine Neptune, trine Mars, we may be getting assistance in letting go of our old forms because Neptune is acting as that solvent type of force. Seema says, mesmerize was a new approach giving birth to all tools of hypnosis and psychology, Neptune and spiritualism, toxic buildup. Yeah. Mesmerize. Okay, what is mesmerize? Is that just tell me more about that. I don't know if I'm familiar with that as a concept. Although if you're just talking about being mesmerized, I mean, sure. Let's see. Castle Rock Corey says, one solution, attention, care, and maintenance. The dialogue around enemy within feels very Mars-Pluto to me. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that could be something that we experience personally, but also collectively. I would caution, not caution, but I would say that those outer planets, yes, they do have personal effects, but I do think that they are very much collective forces, that they are, because they are such slow moving planets. I think the slower a planet moves, the theory is the more it has a collective generational influence. And Lauren is touching on this in a later comment. But the generational influence is important because we feel these contacts with the outer planets more as like a power that is bigger than us as individuals. Like I said, it doesn't mean that we can't experience it individually because we are part of that collective. But one thing maybe to consider with that is that sometimes those outer planets represent much larger forces. Steven says, Pluto is like Super Mario. Clear that poop out. Also believe he is a Cancerian. That Mario is a Cancerian? Maybe. That's funny. Oh, boy. He does like to pop in and out of the pipes, right? Pantrail says, being so Cancerian myself, I love the outer planets because they stay in signs longer and are very generational. Lots of people with similar experiences working together on big things, very family-like. I like that concept. Yeah, absolutely. I agree. Corey says, that insight is so beautiful, Rachel. I've never been able to find words to convey the feeling of impermanence. Thank you for sharing. Yeah, absolutely. The hidden parts of our unconscious mind that might be informing our actions in our weaker moments regarding Pluto. Oh, Seema says mesmerism. Okay. Yeah, I have to learn more about that, Seema. It's something I'm not super familiar with the hypnosis part thing, the Neptune spiritualism. Although I will say, yeah, the spiritualism movement, right, of when Neptune was discovered, late 1800s. I might be getting my timing wrong, but the spiritualism movement did very much coincide with Neptune discovery and like the seances and things of that nature. So that, yes, there is definitely a lot of material there to research. Okay. So let's look at a few other factors within this full moon. So we're talking, I keep saying that. Sorry, friends. It's been a long week. New moon in Scorpio. So we, of course, have the trine to the host, Mars, in Cancer 3. Okay. We have the grand water trine, Mercury, Mars, and Neptune that we've discussed. The first aspect that it makes, okay, is conjoining the moon, conjoining Mercury, the first traditional aspect. The first, and I say this because this is a concept related to a traditional technique called the moon being under the bond. The thought is that when the moon is under the beams of the sun, by conjunction or opposition, okay, it is held back from its signification. So the first aspect that it makes talks about the types of things that it might be able to manifest. Now, the first aspect that it technically makes when it gets released from the bond is an opposition to Uranus. So keep that in mind. But since we're using a traditional technique, I tend to like to keep that particular thing to traditional planets. So the first traditional planet it meets is Mercury, conjoining Mercury at 28 degrees of Scorpio. So we might be really thinking a lot about our old forms. That decan of Scorpio is related to Kairos, the opportune moment. And again, Kairos being the cherub that had a lock of hair on his forehead that could only be caught from the front. You can't catch Kairos from behind. So that decan gives us a lot of thoughts around what has passed, and do we need to let it go, right? Do we need to let go of something? If we keep chasing the moment after it has passed, we tend to do more and more debauchery, is what it's called, the Lord of Debauchery. We tend to maybe produce more things that one could consider evil, trying to glamorize a form that's in the past. So after this new moon, really a day or so after, start to think about where you might be actually trying to glamorize Venus. It's a Venus-ruled decan. A form that has already lost its vitality. Okay, where might you be trying to prop something up in a vampiric way? Okay, trying to keep something alive that's already dead. And what types of things are you doing that could be considered more and more evil? Like vampires go out and kill things to keep themselves alive in a way that they should have died a long time ago. Think about the Highlander, right? For those of you who are familiar with that series. There can be only one. Like to be able to preserve their immortality, they have to kill other Highlanders, or they have to kill other immortals, etc. So where are the ethics around that? If you're trying to keep something alive because you're attached to it and the moment has already passed, well, maybe you should reconsider that. So this is the first aspect on the 2nd of November. We're also going to see Mercury trining Mars and sextiling Pluto on that day. So here you could see Mercury about to ingress. And in this chart, it has ingressed into Sagittarius, but it will trine Mars and sextile Pluto before it moves into Sagittarius. So an understanding of where we might be pursuing luxuries or trying to pursue things that are, where we're taking too much, like where we're full. Where we need to share with others. We need to take less potentially. And understanding how that affects us in our relationship with society and the grander scheme as well. Okay, then we also see Mercury moving into Sagittarius. Okay, so this is our ingress into Mercury's exile. So this is an interesting place for Mercury because Mercury is in its exile, but it does have dignity by face. I think that the main takeaway from this, as we see the new moon cycle unfolding, is that our thoughts are going to move away from feelings of loss or of trying to glamorize the past into feeling very attached to let me recontextualize that. When we understand the forms that need to be let go of, it liberates energy, and that energy needs to find a new body, a new source, a new goal. And I think Mercury in the first decan of Sagittarius is very much related to trying to find a new host for our belief system, a new surrogate, so to speak. And how interesting is that in America we have an election where a lot of our personal beliefs get projected onto these individual candidates and become surrogates for our beliefs. There is a spirit in the first decan of Sagittarius called Loimos, which was the god of plagues. So when I talk about spirit finding a host, you can think about spreading our beliefs out into the world like a disease might spread. Now that can be a challenge, or it can be inspiring. We can help ignite others' passions through our enthusiasms. But Mercury is a planet that tends to function better when it is allowed to explore multiple opinions, okay, like it does in Gemini, or categorize things into different categories and differentiate between things like it does in Virgo. Well, what happens in Sagittarius is Mercury, it just lumps everything together. It just says, well, I don't have to pay attention to the details. This bigger picture is more important to me. And I don't need these other opinions because I've already formulated this belief system and I'm going to spread that belief system. So it becomes harder to listen when Mercury is in Sagittarius. So I would encourage you to take extra effort towards listening and asking questions instead of proselytizing. I consider Mercury in Sagittarius like the TV evangelist's transit. Sometimes that's okay. Sometimes we can be passionate about our beliefs, but I think if we balance that with understanding where other people are coming from, then we can harmonize, right? Instead of running roughshod over other people's beliefs that they are entitled to just as much as we are to our own. Okay. Corey says the hidden part. Oh, I already got that one. Seema says Moon, Mars, mutual reception, both in fall may go either way, and that both could be worse or could alleviate their worst qualities. Yeah, good observation, Seema. I mean, definitely they are trying to help one another, but they're both in positions that are where they really aren't in their best form, right? And again, that doesn't mean that if any of you out there have the moon in Scorpio or the Mars in Cancer, that you can't do lunar or martial things. It just means that that planet is having to utilize resources that are foreign to their nature. And you, as an individual, might have had to utilize resources that were foreign to the nature of that planet. Sometimes we find nurturing in loss with a moon in Scorpio. Sometimes we find release through expressing conflict in our familial situations with Mars and Cancer. Sometimes that's how we process our anger, is with our family, instead of like externalizing it in different ways. So these are just different ways to take a look at things. Jolie James is here. What's up, Jolie? Nice to see you. Hope you're doing well. Okay. So let's keep kind of unfolding this lunar cycle. I'll take you up to the full moon here. So we've got that Mars-Pluto opposition and Venus opposite Jupiter on the 3rd. Okay. And before I do that, I'm just going to stretch out a little bit here. We've been going for an hour and a half. Do me a huge favor, friends. If you are new to the channel, go ahead and subscribe. Subscribe to the newsletter if you want to know when I'm going live. Just do me a quick favor and hit the like button if you can. That really helps us with the algorithm. If you want to make a donation to the work I'm doing here today, you can purchase a super chat while I'm live, or you can go to buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com, or you can buy a super thanks. I had a good friend, one of my good friends over in the Middle East, purchased a super sticker the other day, and just wanted to thank her. Just give a shout out to my friend Noga, and just really appreciate you and hope that you're staying safe and wishing well to your family. So let's talk about this Mars-Pluto opposition. We just talked about that, but let's talk about the Venus-Jupiter part of it and how that might play out. Okay. Let's see. Corey says, I think the previous lunation, full moon in Aries plus Mars in Cancer, also had a Moon-Mars mutual reception via square. Yeah, it did. So we've been having a lot of this Moon-Mars stuff going on. So we're getting a first-rate education in that mutual reception from different positions. Jolie says, Mercury in Sagittarius, my natal placement, but I have mutual reception with my Jupiter in Virgo, so I get a little help, but I can get preachy sometimes. Oh, well, we can all get preachy. I mean, I literally am doing this for a living. like, if you have a guy that can talk for 2 to 3 hours on the internet each week, he probably somewhat likes the sound of his own voice. So no judgment here, friend. So that is interesting, Jolie. You are helping us to talk about another mutual. Well, no, I guess it's not. Let me think about that for a second. I was going to. Oh yeah, yeah. I am right with this. So we have. I was going to break down the Venus Jupiter opposition, but there is a mutual reception between Mercury and Jupiter as well that happens once Mercury moves into Sagittarius, right? So there's mutual receptions everywhere in the chart. Lauren says also with Mars and Cancer, Mars can be very warlike, but an interesting thing I'm studying right now is the consciousness of water. Masaru Emoto's water experiments where he steeps water in something that is to come. Yeah, I'm familiar with those experiences where he says he talks to the water, right? And says loving things to some parts of it and really nasty things to other parts, and see what happens with the water. It's really really fascinating how we can shape our reality through our consciousness. Okay, so this Venus, let's see. Pantero says the essence of thought by word, music, photo, then took a picture of the water melting in its snowflake shape. When Emoto said the word war, the water refused to take shape. Yeah. I think, Lauren, that everything has consciousness. I am becoming more and more animistic as I age and understand, and I'm trying to embrace a more indigenous worldview. As much as I can from my own naturalized perspective, I guess I will say that. But I think that seeing consciousness in everything and these experiments by Emoto start to show us that our words do matter, that different entities have the ability to change based on our relationship with it. If you think about that, like everything's made, not everything, but many living things are made with water, right? Like the trees, right? And if you, this is why talking to trees and being kind to the plants around you is important, because you can change the shape of their water, basically. So I think that, yeah, thank you, friend. Yeah, super important. Yeah, Pantero is confirming that everything has consciousness. I agree with that. And it's very different than our mechanistic Cartesian worldview that we have been forced into. And I think that a return to consciousness, I think, is important. So, but I digress. Let's talk about that Venus-Jupiter opposition. So this is going to happen in conjunction with the Mars-Pluto opposition on the 3rd. And this is a place, here you see Venus at 20 degrees of Sagittarius and retrograde Jupiter at 20 degrees of Gemini. I think that Venus in Sagittarius desires movement, freedom, etc., being able to achieve the goal. When Venus is in the 3rd 10-degree section of Sagittarius, we are dealing with the glamorization of carrying a great weight or being able to bring something to completion. Think about that last decan of Sagittarius as the last time before the winter solstice, where the sun is at the very end of its journey and it's getting barn eager. That's my favorite phrase for Sagittarius 3. It says, "Oh, I've got a burst of energy to get to the finish line." But its opposition with Jupiter is expanding all of the different directions and distractions, etc. I would say that the one of the feelings that me and my partner honestly have been feeling lately is feeling spread a little bit thin. I think that Jupiter in Jupiter in Gemini is in its exile because being able to bring all of the elements of our lives together to reach the goal is a very Jupiterian, Sagittarius, or even Piscean type of experience. But when you have Jupiter drawing upon mercurial resources, it wants to split attention in so many different directions. And it can bring up distractions too. Like, think about it like this. Sometimes it's not even the things that we choose. Sometimes it's just misfortune. Like, it's challenging to do your regular work when your basement's flooded with sewage. That's been our experience this week. as like a feeling of overwhelm, because life doesn't stop when your sewer backs up. You still have responsibilities, you still have work to do and things of that nature. So how do we build in resiliency? I think is one of the things I would ask for Venus Jupiter oppositions. How do we prioritize when there are so many things asking for our attention? I've started to I have a program that I like. It's called Asana, and it's basically just like a task program. So I've been using that more. But I think that the other thing that I will say is that I was feeling this overwhelm the other day, and one of the things I did is I said, you know what? One of the things that has gone a little bit by the wayside with all of these extra responsibilities is our house has gotten a little bit messy. Like that, there, things weren't in the places that they were supposed to be because we just didn't have time. Every time we were thinking, oh, we got to clean and vacuum and all this and that, there was some other thing that was a higher priority in that moment. And I just had to sit back and say, you know what? My own mental space and health, I think, will be supported by a cleaner living environment. And even though it doesn't seem like it's as high a priority as some of these other more imminent things, this is actually going to help me facilitate being more functional with all of those things that I feel like I have to do. So I took a morning to just completely clean up the house, vacuum, sage, floor to water, whatever it is, put a bunch of things away, and I instantly felt better. I mean, I really do believe in the power of feng shui and the qi that flows in our homes. You'd be amazed at what those types of things can do. So I think if we're feeling overwhelmed, pick something that can actually help facilitate doing those tasks more effectively, rather than just getting confused by which task is a priority, but which task is going to support all of those other tasks. And I think that's one of the things that we can ask ourselves, especially with this Venus-Jupiter opposition, where we're feeling a strong desire to finish something, but a lot of different distractions. Jolie says, I can feel that. Jupiter and Gemini can feel like having a container that's too small for all the water you want to hold. Yeah. I'm just laughing because, Jolie, you came in late, but our pipes backed up this week. Literally, the pipes couldn't hold any more water in our house, and just overflowed. So, yeah, absolutely. Seema says, Jupiter and Gemini makes me think of a juggler, and Venus and Sagittarius makes me think of joy in laughter. Oh, I like that. So we're trying to juggle a lot of things, but maybe we will find the right balance, hopefully. Rachel says, absolutely never underestimate the calming and clarifying effect of clearing and cleaning space. Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. This is coming from, I think, Rachel, you have some Virgo planets too, but I have a Virgo stellium. So having Mars in Virgo myself, and Mars being my Time Lord, when I get angry, I get to cleaning. I like rage clean. If I'm like, I'm angry about this, I gotta get organized. I'm so disorganized. This is making me so angry. But I feel better after I do so. So I think I think it can be very healing. Oh, Libra moon, says Rachel. Both are benefics and love humor. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, the different styles of humor with Venus and Jupiter in those two signs. I would say that Venus in Sagittarius is a satirical placement, and satire makes things bigger than they should be. It blows things out of proportion. It takes a concept and it makes it ridiculous by its scale. Gemini, on the other hand, can take things and minimize them. It can make things that should be important seem irreverent and less important and small. So those two things coming together with one another, like scale, is going to be a really important conversation between the two of them. Rachel says, doing some of the small things well when life seems overwhelming and grabbing us from multiple directions, ironically slowing down can make us more efficient. Yep, I agree, 100%. 100%. Okay, so that's our opposition with Venus and Jupiter. I guess just, Clean your house. There you go. That's the Virgo solution to this Sagittarius Gemini opposition. Just clean something. Like that'll be fine. I mean, on some level, that is sort of the balance point between those two, right? Virgo is the kind of the midpoint between those two oppositions. All right. So if we look at after the 3rd here, we've got Mars on that same day ingressing into Leo. So here's Mars moving into Leo on the 3rd, late in the day on November the 3rd. I think that's going to be kind of a relief for many of us who, me in particular, I think I have Mars as a time lord, and its condition improving, I think, is going to be good. Now, the challenge with that is Mars now moves into the square with the sun. So I've broken this down more in the astrology of November, but keep in mind that this is a temporary respite. Mars is going to station retrograde on December, the 15th, I think. Let me look it for sure. I'm pretty sure it's the 15th. And at 6 degrees of Sagittarius, right? And then it's going to retrograde back into Cancer in January, okay? So I'm just looking at my notes. So this is something where the Mars is going to play out in a completely different arena. It's going to move away from playing out in the domestic spheres, the places of comfort, and we might feel a little bit more pressure to be visible around this period of time, and that could feel uncomfortable during Scorpio season. Remember, Scorpio likes to do its work behind the scenes. It's like the ninja, right? It's the secret assassin. It doesn't like to be super visible. And Mars, in the place of feeling the pressure of becoming visible, could be more of what we're experiencing when Mars moves into Leo. All right. Now, on the 4th, we're building to our election day here. We have the Sun trine Saturn. So I think that with the Sun making a positive trine to Saturn in the water signs, we're dealing with a spotlight, the Sun, in a decan of Scorpio that's associated with nostalgia, but also how we merge together with others in a deeply emotional way, and an understanding of whether that's healthy or whether that's challenging. And when we have a trine with Saturn, understanding our limitations in our relationships that are deeply enmeshed with other people, I think is going to be important on November the 4th. You learn a lot about your partners when you face grief and when you are working together on projects. My partner and I are working together on these planet webinars, and we've been learning a lot about each other, especially with also facing a period of grief. My partner's father passed away right at the beginning of us starting this series. So being able to balance supporting one another as partners, as domestic partners versus professional partners it's a delicate balance. And the Sun trine Saturn could show us where those limitations are and where we need to build structures to be able to support those things. Now we get to the 6th, and we've got Mercury out of bounds, trining the North Node. Okay, so we're skipping right over Election Day. Like Election Day, we have a Capricorn moon on Election Day. Mars is in Leo. I don't know what's going to happen, friends. I'm not making an election prediction. I think the only prediction I will make around the election is that whatever does happen, we probably aren't going to get the final answer for a few weeks, few months, etc., because Mercury is going to be stationing retrograde, very shortly after the election. And this is not a surprise either. Like one party in particular has already said that if they don't win, they're going to, basically they're setting up, all sorts of lawsuits and things of that nature. So not surprising. But what I will say is that we just need to maintain our sanity while it's all playing out, and do your part. Go out and vote. Make sure you vote. But then we're just going to have to kind of live into the answer and let the process play out on some level. Let's see. Lauren says, I saw a Scorpio t-shirt recently that said, trust reserved for Pluto. Modern rulership. Really funny. I find it true and I might buy it. Okay. I mean, yeah. Again, there are some reasons why people have conflated Pluto with Scorpio, but personally, I don't use Pluto as a ruler for Scorpio. Use Mars, but I can understand some of the conflations with that. One thing I will say about all of this: symbols are multivalent, and the process of entraining yourself to a particular system, I think, is more important than having every technical thing agree, if that makes sense. Whatever system we've become entrained to, and entrainment means that we've come into alignment to, that we, like a radio signal, we've tuned into the right channel. Whatever we become entrained to as a vehicle for divine consciousness to speak to us through, I think that's the most important thing for receiving truth. And consistency in our technique, I think, is important. But if people have become entrained to see things through the modern rulerships, I think that there's validity in that. But yeah, I think that I just like the beauty of the organization and the philosophical rationales of the traditional astrological system. I'm not a purist by any means. Like I went through a little phase of that when I first started studying traditional astrology. I was like, everything about modern astrology is wrong, and be one of those guys. And then I came back around and was like, oh well, there's some truths in these other things too. And Jeffrey Cornelius's work via Nightlight Astrology and Adam Ellenboss introducing me to a lot of those concepts are really important. It's important to acknowledge all that lineage, right? But yeah, I really agree with that concept of entrainment, especially with astrology, because I'm not an astrological purist. We use tarot and animal cards, and we use I-Ching, and there's so many different oracles that we use to find truth here. And we're seeing if we can find threads. That's what we're looking for, is Ariadne's threads to lead us out of the maze of the Minotaur, which we call life. All right. So what can we experience with Mercury out of bounds, right? Mercury out of bounds, it's basically when a planet is moving outside the normal movement of the sun, right? The normal declination path of the sun. So our communication styles are going to probably be outside the normally socially acceptable exchanges. Not surprising. Like, if astrologers or if our intuitions are correct about things not being completely resolved at this election, Mercury going out of bounds the next day is everyone's going to have an opinion about things. There's probably going to be a lot of people communicating around, what they think should or should not happen. What I will say about this is that this is going to happen pretty close to the fixed star Antares, right? So we were, Seema's pointing out Antares is here. Scorpio and Sagittarius, when conjunct in Antares, 10 degrees, called the heart of the Scorpion, as a rival to Mars, were apparently chosen as the best placement for soldiers. So this is happening fairly close to that in this decan. So intensity, right? Intensity, obsession with something are important themes of Antares. But Mercury out of bounds in Sagittarius could be just people like taking and running with a belief. I would highly caution all of you to stay open-minded. Like, ask questions. Be okay. I don't know if okay is the right word, but try to come into alignment with some ambiguity around this. Like, when things aren't settled, when we try to force something to be settled, that can create even more agitation and anxiety. Imagine having a jar of water that has dirt in it. And what you are, and you keep, this is what you do. Imagine you have this jar in your hand and you start shaking it and you go, just settle. just, I want this water to be clear. And you keep shaking it and it just keeps like agitating all of it and making it muddy and muddy and muddy and muddier, right? It's never going to settle that way. You can't yell at that jar like the Emoto, right? Those experiments and shake it and expect that the clarity is going to come. And if we as a community keep agitating and worrying and getting anxious and adding more confusion, through shaking up everything all the time, we will never be able to get that clarity that we need through becoming still. So I think the water becomes still when you put the jar down and you back away from it and you let that process of that sediment settling play out. And I think that that's going to be important as we move through election season. Does that mean that I'm happy that all of these things are probably going to be unsettled? No. I would like to figure this out and have it be over with as much as I think a lot of people would. But I do know that if I state of anxiety and agitation throughout the entire process, I will experience burnout. And I won't be at my best if I need to take action when it becomes necessary. That to me is the most important part of this. How can you become so centered and clear that the actions that you take when it becomes necessary are through clarity rather than through confusion? So don't mistake people's inaction or quietness or calmness for checking out. I think sometimes, like, to be a great soldier, to be a great warrior, or whatever it is, you have to be calm. I mean, I'm going to use the football metaphor here again, but one of my favorite teams, the Green Bay Packers, their quarterback, Jordan Love, is a Scorpio sun. He has Venus, Cazimi, and Scorpio in the heart of the sun. And one of the things that they say about Mr. Jordan Love is that he is calm under pressure. Doesn't matter if his team is down. Doesn't matter if he has pass rushers in his face. He never gets rattled. And I will tell you, one of the things that he probably has learned in his life is to be able to be calm in a crisis. Jordan Love's dad was a police officer. His mom and his dad were police officers in Bakersfield, California. And his dad ended up committing suicide after he was on, it's another story of potentially dealing with some challenging reactions to medication. He was on some antidepressant medication and ended up taking his own life when Jordan Love was a teenager. And that was a formative experience for him, to the point where him having to play a football game pales in comparison to the crisis situation that he had to face as a young person. So through that tragedy, he became unflappable. And I think that this is a good lesson to learn, is how can we become calm, even if we're preparing and making preparations to take action? How can we become clear so that the actions that we take are more effective? Painted Turtle says, I agree. I love a diverse view of astrology. Also, Chris Brennan did a cast on Pluto and Aquarius with one historical theme highlighting discoveries and evolutions in astrology. Important to hear one another and stay open. Absolutely, Lauren. Super important. That is one of the things that I try to model on this channel, is as a Venus and Gemini native with Venus in the 11th house, is just to be open to other people's voices and opinions. It doesn't mean I agree with them. Me giving people a platform to express their opinion on my channel does not mean that I agree with every single person here. But I do think that being able to hear each other is important. Jolie says, I think most Scorpios have such a karmic story. You'd be amazed at how some of the different sun signs, etc., different placements have similar origin stories. A lot of Scorpio placements, doesn't have to be just the sun, it could be Scorpio moons, etc., have experienced loss in their early childhood. A lot of Capricorn types have experienced hardship or poverty, starting at the very bottom of society and having to work their way up, something of that nature, right? So, yeah, I think that astrology can help us contextualize those experiences for sure. So that's Mercury out of bounds, trining the North Node, and that gets us to our first quarter moon. We'll go through this a little bit quicker here. First quarter moon is usually an existential crisis where we're trying to bring something into reality. So this is the first quarter in Aquarius 2, second decan of Aquarius, where we might be trying to transition from one shore to another. Think of the Six of Swords card, and we may be trying to transition from one government, leader to another or something of that nature. And it takes time, and there may be a transitionary phase that's going on. So that's our first quarter moon. We might be going through this in our own lives, transitioning either to a sense of merging emotionally with another, because the sun will be in Scorpio 2, excuse me. I should get this on the screen here in the correct placement. There it is. So you can see this here. Here is the quarter moon, okay? About 17 or 18 degrees. And so we're in a state of traveling, of movement, and we can be vulnerable in that state. Sometimes when we're on a journey, we have to be very aware of our surroundings. So I would caution you to be very aware of your surroundings during these transitory phases, and embrace the fact that you have to have a certain sense of decorum while you're traveling as well. And then finally on the 11th here, well, not finally, but next, Venus is going to move into Capricorn, okay, probably improving its position because it is going to be not in an opposition with its host, but in a sextile with its host Saturn. So we might be trying to think about what area we want to build next, which is a Capricorn 2 signification. Where do we want to build our next material realities and structures? Saturn will station direct on November the 15th, okay? So again, even more of a positive condition for not only Saturn, but for Venus that is being hosted by it. And then we have our full moon here in Taurus 3. And I'll do an entire live stream on this. Whoops. I'll do an entire live stream on this full moon, but it's conjunct Uranus. So probably some shakeups around that period of time. It's going to get interesting. It's going to get interesting. I think that this full moon for this lunation cycle is going to show us which forms we need to let go of, and how we can remedy some of the mistakes of the past through a liberatory energy of Uranus, a flash of insight potentially. Now, both of these planets are pretty close to a fixed star called Algol, which can be very passionate, very dangerous. So try to maintain your sanity through all this. And I think we can maintain our sanity through pacing ourselves. Emotional pacing is really important. All right. So, friends, that is what I have for you with the lunation and the time afterwards. Do me a huge favor, like and subscribe. We are going to visit me at spencermichaud.com and follow me over at Instagram and Twitter and Threads. We've got two more things for you before we break for the day, and that is an I-Ching. So here's our I-Ching for the new moon in Scorpio 1. And I don't know why my camera is doing this. So I've got like a weird camera. There it is. Now it'll zoom in. It's like an auto zoom on my camera. All right, so here we have the hexagram number 46, which translates to ascending, okay? So we are ascending, pushing upwards, rising, climbing, persistence and devotion, progressing step by step, making steady progress in the accumulation of small advantages. Jack Balkin, my favorite I-Ching author, says the theme of this hexagram is slow and steady advancement through exertion. One begins in relative obscurity and eventually reaches a position of influence. Sound like anything we've been talking about today? Like, let's just slowing down. It says, step by step, you are making progress. Your upward movement meets with no resistance, and therefore nothing holds you back. It is all a matter of time, and you will not get where you want to go overnight, but a devoted and persistent effort over time will pay off handsomely in the long run. You need not worry about the ultimate result. The secrets to your success are threefold. First, the time is right for your advance. Second, you have established the necessary groundwork. When the fundamentals are sound, every move forward brings cumulative benefits that bring you even closer to your goal. Third, and most important, you succeed because you do not try to get everything all at once. Instead, you move forward slowly but surely, inch by inch, never hesitating, but always advancing in your steady, deliberate steps. There's 3 changing lines with this. It says, if one is sincere, it is beneficial to bring even a small offering, no blame. So this line talks about having modest resources, advancing even if you might be at a disadvantage. Now, I think this is related to the moon in its fall. Think about the fall, the word for fall. It's escaping me now. I believe it's something like endomia. I can't remember the Greek term, but it basically means a depression in the ground. Okay. And there's nowhere to go but up. Like, think of yourself as a bottom of a well, and we're trying to climb our way out. So even though we are at a disadvantage resource-wise, if slow and steady progress is going to help us to change our station in life or in whatever we're doing. The second changing line says that the king makes an offering at Mount Qi. Good fortune, no blame. So this was a mountain in western China and the site of a temple that was dedicated to ancestral lands of Shu, I believe that's how it's pronounced. If someone out there can pronounce Chinese better than I will defer to you. But this talks about an ascension in power. It says you're on the verge of achieving your goals. Everything is extremely favorable. Continue to act in a principled fashion. And remember those who have helped you along the way and maintain worthy habits and traditions. You are about to prevail. Carry the best of the past with you into the future. Then finally, it says pushing upward into darkness. Why is my camera doing this? I'm sorry for all the herky-jerky camera things. It's just happening automatically. Let's see. Hold on a second. So, it says, pushing upward into darkness, it is beneficial to be unremittingly persevering. To push upward into darkness means to push forward blindly, unaware of the hazards that remain ahead. The time of easy, unforced progress is coming to a close. Do not try to advance without constantly reevaluating your position and exercising the utmost care and discretion. Acting on blind impulse now will put you in danger. Try to gain intelligence about what lies ahead of you. Pause and consider whether you should proceed or wait for a more propitious time. Be consistent and principled in your efforts. You must be exceedingly careful and conscientious now if you wish to avoid damaging your position or losing what you have gained. I-Ching sort of gives us a story. I like to read the lines from the bottom up, so you can see sort of how things might unfold, right? So it's cautioning us to be careful in pushing upwards in our ascension. And the final hexagram that we have here is number 56, which is called the Wanderer. So it's also related to traveling. It's a hexagram that is unsettled, uncertain, in transition. I feel like this is very related to the first quarter moon that I talked about with the Six of Swords. We're in a transitory period. Things are unsettled. When we are traveling, when we are in transition, we have to be extra cautious. We don't necessarily know what the lay of the land is going to be. We need to practice decorum. Sometimes we need to go forth in a little bit of a cloaked manner. When you visit someone else's home or you visit someone else's country and you don't understand the customs, you don't just kind of drive forward boorishly. You observe, you ask questions, you try to figure out what the socially accepted way of doing things is. I think this is a really good piece of advice, especially for Mercury moving through Sagittarius, is we don't want to move forward blindly. We don't want to base something on what we think is going to happen. We want to observe and then react to what is happening through being able to gather information, to ask questions, and live with some of the ambiguity. Okay. Lauren says, your plant in the back must be in its Leo season. Lots of FaceTime via the camera today. It's interesting to me. I mean, I feel like the plant has its own consciousness, and the plant says, my little plant back here, it says, I want to be the star of the show today. So sorry for all the movement on the camera, but again, there's an auto camera thing today. Maybe we should give it a name, the channel mascot. I will say, this plant behind me, I'm not exactly sure the technical name for it, but I've had that plant since I was about 20 years old, and I'm 44 now. That plant is almost 25 years old, and it was actually stolen from my house when I was in college, and then the police found it in someone's trash can, in the thief's trash can. It came back to me after being stolen, and just a really interesting story. It is definitely a spirit, or a genus loci of the house. It has some nature spirits inhabiting it that are very powerful. So I don't know what name we should give it. Maybe you can name it for me. There it is. See, it says, here I am. Oh, that's funny. Kate says, alive. Oh, I missed you so much. Oh, Kate. Well, you're coming in at the very end here, but hopefully we'll be able to give you some insight with the replay, and nice to see you here, friend. All right. So 46, pushing upwards, practicing decorum, understanding that we're in transition and that things are going to take some time to play out, super important. So how do we act during those times? Well, the animal spirit is it's perfect. I got the octopus for you, friends. So I choose these animals randomly through, I have an animal guide book that I like. It's called Animal Frequency by Melissa Alvarez, and I randomly pull an animal, and it always seems to speak towards the astrology. So look at this beautiful scorpionic purple octopus. Octopuses are very interesting animals. First of all, there are a number of things that I think are speaking to us through the octopus. First of all, they're extremely intelligent animals. They're good problem solvers. They have all of these nerve endings and all of these different legs that they have that can do various tasks. I think part of that reflects Jupiter and Gemini and being able to manage all of the different, things that are pulling and vying for our attention. They also are masters of camouflage. They can blend in with almost anything when they're hunting or when they're feeling threatened. I think it's going to be very important for us to be very conscientious and careful about where we choose to be visible and where we need to blend in. I would just be careful out there, friends. Depending on how things go in America, who knows what types of experiences we might have based on what we have or have not said publicly. And I say that only not as a repressive type of experience, but more so as a self-preservation type of experience. The octopus knows that sometimes the hammer or the nail that sticks out the furthest is going to get the hammer. So sometimes we have to live to fight another day. And like Scorpio, sometimes our best work is done in darkness and in shadow and in invisibility. Sometimes it's internal work. Sometimes it's behind the scenes work. There's a lot of good that you can do behind the scenes if you are feeling like you're in a dangerous situation and you have to kind of be a little bit more stealthy. So the octopus is teaching us about stealth. They also have an ability to confuse predators with their ink. They can spray ink to get away from someone who's threatening them. This book I have talks about not getting caught in your own ink, right? So like if you're trying to create confusion, or if you feel like you're getting into a confusing situation, or you're stirring up the waters like I was talking about, it can be easy to get lost in our own confusion. And sometimes we have to let ourselves settle to come to clarity again. But I think one of the main things that Octopus is trying to teach us is how to do many things at once and how to do them well, juggling different tasks. being able to wiggle free from a predicament, and then do it with intelligence and come up with creative ideas. All right, friends, that's what I've got for you today. Let's see. Kate says, at least you got the message. I miss all of you. Rachel, Stephen, Don. Oh, Kate, hope that you're doing well, my friend. Hope you're doing well and that life is treating you well. All right. There you go. The plant the plant had to have one more one more one more time to shine. So there you go. Octopus can probably hold on in turbulent currents. Yeah, really great observation. Thank you, Kate. Interesting. I resonate with that, octopus. Absolutely. Okay, friends, that's what I have for you today. Me and the plant, as you can see here, are going to wrap it up for the day. Appreciate all of you. Do me a huge favor, like and subscribe the video today. There you go. I think our little plant had its time, so now it's back. I don't know what's going on with this today. So many spirits. Go over to spencermichaud.com. If you want to book a reading, click on the Book Now button. If you want to sign up for the Dignity and Devotion webinar series, you can click on the Book Now button as well. The Mercury planetary webinar is coming on November the 7th, so check that out. What else? If you want to follow me over on Twitter, Instagram, Threads, at Spencer Michaud, you can find me there. It's mostly cat memes and Lord of the Rings stuff at this point, but so it goes. I try to keep it lighthearted on those platforms. All right, friends. Oh, Jolie, thank you so much for your super sticker here. Appreciate you. Appreciate you, friend. Yes, thank you, friends. Thank you, Tamer Takayua, Tamer Takuya. Sorry. Hopefully I'm getting that correctly. Appreciate you being here, friends. Yeah, Kate, we got a Mercury webinar on November the 9th, so check that out on the webinar series. We have a whole series for the 7 traditional planets. You can sign up for all 7 if you want in there as well. All right, thanks, friends. Have a great new moon, okay? Goodbye, Plant. Spencer, Robert Plant behind us. There you go. He's dazed and confused for so long. It's not true. No one, so I don't know, I'm not going to try to quote Led Zeppelin today, but I like Led Zeppelin. There, yeah, see, there he goes. Sorry, Robert Plant behind us. Just, he says, yes, you're acknowledging me here. This is so funny. Thank you, Spencer. Much love and gratitude from Tasmania. RC, that's amazing. Thank you for being here, friend. Trip Wilder the first. Really appreciate a calm voice in wild times. Thank you, friend. Appreciate you being here. Rachel says, as always, I'm wilting by this time, but really enjoyed and benefited. Oh, thank you, Rachel, for staying up late with us. Appreciate you, friend. All right. Yes. Good night, everyone. The plant must be a Leo. Robert Plant is a Leo, right? So funny. All right. Well, from me and my buddy Robert over there, have a great Scorpio new moon. Have a great weekend. One day at a time. You know, I'll be here each week, you know, for the foreseeable future, I hope. And we'll just try to be a calm presence in the center of whatever chaos we have to experience. But remember, a lot of that calmness, it comes from within you. So if you are able to calm yourself, it is so much easier to deal with all of the noise outside. Maybe that comes through being outside, connecting with nature, reading a book, turning off your TV for a little bit, just chilling out. Okay. And I know that there's things that we have to do to protect vulnerable people. And I think that it's very important to do those things. But it starts when we are calm and clear and collected first. You're going to be able to take such better actions out in the world if you yourself are coming from a place of clarity and peace. So be kind to yourself through that, and be kind to one another, and we'll get through this together. All right, friends. That's what I've got for you. Have a good one, and we'll see you the next time. Peace.